And we're live.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the second installation of our Professional Pathways unit as part of the Digital Media and Learning Commons. My name is Matt, and I am joined by my co-facilitators Cassidy Puckett from Northwestern and Adar Ben Eliyahu from University of Haifa. And I am super stoked today because we are hosting our Research Hackathon. This is an extension of our panel last week where we talked about the challenges of getting started with research, and we tried to tackle everything from funding to research methods to collaborative work. And I want to thank everybody who did blog recaps. The social media after the event was really great. But the main theme from our discussion, I think, was, in a nutshell, advisors can't do everything. And that's where initiatives like DMLCommons come in. Our graduate programs teach really important skills, but many graduate students and junior faculty are left to really connect the dots about all these different aspects of research. And this is why Professional Pathways is really great. It's designed to connect those dots. Next week we have another unit that talks about community-based and participatory research projects. The unit after is just about publishing, and in particular interdisciplinary publishing. And our last unit is about connecting our research to actual jobs, because jobs are important. Not just academic jobs, which usually our departments train us for, but for public and private sector work. And this is, I believe, stuff you just can't get anywhere else, so you guys should be sure to tune in. But today, as I said, I am super stoked because we are extending our theme of connecting the dots from grad programs to running a research hackathon. And I'm really excited to see folks start to pile into the Etherpad. So we've collected all these questions from everybody out there in the DMLCommons public, and they're listed on our Etherpad. So if you're not connected, please do so by clicking the link to Etherpad from the webinar page. It should be just below the image of us lovely people talking right now. And as you sign in, put in your name, introduce yourself in chat. This is going to be a really fun conversational atmosphere. So here's how it's going to go. We're going to tackle these questions one by one. We've marked some that we're going to start with for roughly 7 to 10 minutes. We want to be sure to kind of give time to each of the questions until the hour is up. And we've numbered the questions where we are going to start. And we will be sure to tell you where we are in that moment. You guys can add in your ideas and solutions in bullets underneath the question. And Cassidy, Adar, and myself will talk about them. So we thought we would start with a little bit of practice to get everybody in the swing of things. So our first question, which is under the hackathon list, is a bit of fun. And I'm hoping that everyone will have an answer to this. Otherwise, I will feel really embarrassed, and you'll find out why. So our first question, which is at the top of the list, if you guys can see it, I'm bolding it now. How do you procrastinate? So I'm going to go in and leave my own answer, and you guys can maybe put your name afterwards in parentheses, and you guys can put yours underneath. I see a lot of awesome people on the list on the top right. So just jot in, how do you procrastinate? So I definitely procrastinate with video games. And I describe myself as like a seasonal gamer just because I only tend to play a lot when I have a lot of stuff to do. And I see Adar likes comfort food. That's good.
I go get some comfort food so I have something to munch on while I get the work done.
Someone else put down that they like researching rabbit holes. So like I wonder, like actual rabbit holes, or is it like a rabbit hole logic? So you're like looking for other topics. Because what I will do is I will actually start projects that have nothing to do with what I'm working on in the moment.
Legos.
I think I know who the pugs in Lego, Jameson. Wikipedia is another really good one. So, but this basically illustrates like how this is going to go. So we're going to tell you, how do you procrastinate is the question. And we're going to get all these really great answers underneath. So I think that should give everybody kind of an idea of how we're going to do it. Are you guys, Adar or Cassie, are you guys ready to get started?
We are.
All right. So Cassidy, do you want to get us going with our next question? And I will start the timer.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in. So on the Etherpad, if you scroll down, so underneath where we were just writing those procrastination questions, if you scroll down a little bit, sorry, I'm having a little bit of scrolling issues myself. I don't know if anybody else is having, there we go. So it's under question, let's see, under the section that says methods, you'll see a number 1, and that question reads in bold, anyone having trouble studying technology that keeps changing/moving and still adhering to the rigor of the academy. And I'll go ahead and read the rest of that, but I want to make sure everybody can scroll to that spot. So I'm just going to...
You guys do like a +1 in chat if you're on board with question number 1, and we should be good.
Does everybody see where that is? Just do +1 into the chat. So I have +1 into the chat. Do other people see where we are?
Looks like people are procrastinating.
we're good at procrastination. So, that first question is under the methods section. That's in bold. And it says, number 1, anyone having trouble studying technology that keeps changing, moving, and still adhering. Nice. Okay, so Anna, thank you.
Cool.
Amanda, awesome. Okay. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So and then the follow-up questions under there, it says, I keep feeling like I either have to compromise my knowledge of the larger field I'm studying or compromise my rigor. Ethnography typically takes a long time. I've seen the benefit of spending a lot of time with data, but I worry about how worthwhile my work will be once it gets out and the tech has already gone in a different direction. Yes, I look at comprehension. And the internet. By the time a study gets to publishing, it's about 5 or 6 years old. I have turned to doing all my work on the open web, and I'm exploring alternate publication outlets, but I need to get better. So we've got an idea from Matt about doing short burst studies. So since I'm the person reading this question, I'm actually going to go ahead and sort of think this through myself, which does come from a disciplinary perspective. I've definitely thought about this question a lot. And I chose to make a professional decision not to focus on the nature of the specific technology. So I don't personally look at the tool. So I don't look closely at Twitter and what is or is not enabled with that tool. But you can do that. And you can do it in a way that is tackling broader questions, such as cultural questions. So if you're looking at a specific tool, from my perspective, if you're looking at a specific tool, and I come from sociology, you could take a text like Wendy Griswold. She's got a textbook on cultural sociology and methods around that. And she uses the trope of the cultural diamond. And this is similar to activity theory in learning sciences that learning sciences uses quite a bit. And you basically look at a cultural object, and in my opinion, any kind of tool can be considered a cultural object, whether physical or virtual. And you can start tackling questions about cultural practice that have to do with that technology, while at the same time that you're talking about things that people have been wondering about for a very long time. So things like the nature of tacit knowledge that go back as far as Socrates. I mean, you could just like go back and try to figure out that question forever. So I guess my point is that I see that if you are trying to chase after where the tools are going, which is it's an interesting question of itself, how do tools develop? But that's the question, is how do tools develop rather than how does this specific tool develop?
Yeah, and I would agree with Cassidy. I mean, I think one of the ways, so I think like a very like quick fix, which I know that a lot of technologists do, is they do these short burst studies. Like in informatics, they'll design a study that's like 3 to 4 months long, and that's the tenure of the study. But maybe you agree with this too, Cassidy, but in sociology, like, we're, very huffy, like 3 months, that couldn't possibly be a study, like it has to go for, like, an ethnographic study could take 3 years. And I think maybe I'm in agreement with you, Cassidy, but I was once told that technologies can change, but social structure is timeless. So if you study what animates the use of technology, and you design a study that animates, the Facebook or MySpace or Friendster will disappear into the ether by the time your publication gets out. But whatever theories you come up with about why the social structure is there will hopefully have lasting value. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's also some processes or strategies that are related to just technology in general, and then technology is just a tool, or that specific technology is a tool that you're looking at, and then the strategies become strategies that can be talked about regardless of what the specific technology is. So anyways, when you publish work, you need to embed it in kind of a larger theory, and so you need to think about that going into the work, and then use that, as part of the research.
I just wanted to add in some of the ideas people are coming in with in the Etherpad. I think that's Amanda Oshner, just because I know the topic pretty well, because it's such a great topic. But she was explaining how in designing dissertation research on women in games, like Gamergate, is tough because the movement is evolving so quickly, I imagine. We have some other people giving it a thumbs up at being a good topic. And if you stick to broader research questions on women's experiences in the game industry, that keeps the movement of the project. And I think that's a really terrific example of making the theory and the research questions kind of drive your study of the technology, and not necessarily focusing first on the technology itself as a way to get at that. Oh, and people are listing resources. This is terrific.
That book is $1.99, by the way, which is kind of amazing because it's a very expensive book. Anyway, all right. What else do we have? We've got experience in my work on social movements. Often, by the time the publications come out, the movement is defunct. Well, that can teach us a lot about the nature of. So I have a friend who actually does research on pop-up restaurants, and these are sort of pseudo organizations that are episodic. What she calls episodic. This is Daphne Demetri at Northwestern, soon to be Oxford, and so she goes to the organizational literature to talk about. What does that mean that they have to sort of, they're pop-up, so by nature they have to be sort of appearing and disappearing, but they have to have some kind of stability for the folks who are involved. And it's similar to what's going on with social movements, and it's similar what happens in technology. So you can study it for a short period of time, but you can link all of that data to this much larger body of research, and that can be a very powerful way of using these changing technologies. Yep. Okay, so I think that we are going to the next question now. This is great. I love what's going on the Etherpad. Keep on adding your thoughts, you guys. This is awesome. And if you think of other things while we, shift to the second question, which you can see is right below the question that we just hacked, just keep on adding information in there. Let's see. So we're on to number 2. Matt, do you want to take that one?
Totally. Okay. So everybody, shift your gaze down to question number 2. This is also kind of a lesson in crowd management for each of us, but I think we're doing a really great job. So second question, I'm going to start the little timer. I'm a first-year graduate student in the social sciences, and I want to start an ethnographic project. I'm less worried about my research questions and more worried about how to get in. I'm specifically looking at gender, and race in high schools? Do I just email teachers blindly? And someone, when they submitted the question, someone already replied and said, your research questions first. Totally. I think developing research questions is a very important part of the process. But getting in, for any researcher that's doing a survey or a qualitative instrument, is some of the most challenging stuff that you have to do. I can definitely speak to high school. So I would not email teachers blindly. I think it's the impulse. It's the impulse because you're like, okay, I should go to teachers. Those are the people that I want to study. David Snow, who is a sociology faculty in Department of Sociology at UC Irvine, where I'm studying, wrote a piece that, of course, I can't remember now, but if anybody has a link to it, that would be terrific, about knowing the organizational structure of the type of place that you want to get into. And in part of the article, they talk about schools as actually insanely hierarchical places. And so going to someone like a teacher could actually do you a disservice, I found, in the long run, because if you don't have the approval from the person at the top first, it can make the whole process much more difficult to get in. So in my case, I reached out to the principals at schools and I said, you frame it, in the case of gender and race, I would say, I'm really interested in learning about how to, minimize, enhance the experiences of women and minorities in schools, and I'd love to partner with you for a project, and then you just kind of go from there. So that was my strategy. I'd be curious to see what other people had as well. We're already getting some really cool comments for a not easy and helpful way to gain access.
And I agree, when you're going into schools, it's better to, I think, to go first up high. And I went to, when I needed to get my dissertation done, and I've done this before and other researchers, in other research that I've done, I always go to the person high up. So I went to the school board and I asked to meet with the person in charge of research, and I went in there and I marketed myself. I said, hey, I'm doing this really cool study about motivation and self-regulation and learning, and it's really important that you guys are on board because this is important for us to know. And she got really excited about it, and she told the principals of all the county that they had to meet with me, and then I went to the principals, and they got really excited about it, and then the teachers were on board, and and I ended up getting a lot of participants. And so it's getting people on board, and I've done it in internationally now in different countries where I went into the people that actually, if they can tell the people below them hierarchically in the organization that they have to be part of it, then they'll be part of it. I've done it in a mentoring program that I currently have a study in, and we went into the CEO of the organization, and we got him really excited about it, and then the doors were open. So I think I agree that that's the way to do it.
So I definitely tackle this in a slightly different way. I agree that going to the top, you need, especially in school districts that have like research and review boards, which not every district does. But a place like Chicago Public Schools, which is where I did my dissertation research, they have quite the process of getting the approval according to their research and review board. The tricky thing is that even in order to submit it, your research through that body, you already have to have a letter of support from somebody in the district. And so you actually kind of already have to be in there a little bit. And you also have to have, if you're coming from a university like I was, you also have to have your IRB set with your university, which needs to have the approval of whoever you're studying before you submit the IRB for approval back at your university. So the way that, so it's a lot of shifting things around if you're going in that way. And so what I take advantage of is pilot studies. I say so that's one way of doing it for those organizational bodies is I will look into an after-school program that might not have such big, levels of hierarchy. And I'll go and I'll sit with that after school program, and maybe they have a part of their program that's housed at a school, and I'll go and sit in that, and then I'll see if I can get a letter from them. I give the boilerplate letter, and I bring it to the IRB, and I get my IRB from my university, and then I start going, so it's a lot of like little steps along the way. Another way that I've done it is if I'm really just concerned with shadowing kids, which I've done a lot in my research, I will ask the school for help recruiting students, and often they'll just like basically open the doors and say, we can help you to just hand out some letters for parents to take home, for kids to take home to their parents during homeroom when they're not doing anything else academic. So you go in there and you say, "Hi, I'm Cassidy. I'm doing this study on da 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 da." You hand out the letters, and maybe you have a conversation with a teacher, and then if you have that teacher saying, "This person seems really nice," then you may be more likely to get the approval of the principal if there's a teacher who's already saying like, "This is great." And so just sliding that little, you have to be very socially adept in schools, I would say.
For sure. And one of the things that I always tell myself and I tell my research assistants is that for me, I want to go unnoticed. So that means that I don't want to make a ruckus. I don't want to walk into the front office and say, "Hey, where are my, all the kids that said that they'd be part of the study, and can I have it now?" It's like I walk in and I stand quietly, and I'm like a fly on the wall, and then the secretary is done with whatever she's doing, and she'll be like, "Oh, hey, yeah, you have more, here I have more questionnaires for you," or, so I think the idea is to kind of be inconspicuous and to kind of keep it on low key on the one hand, and then on the other hand, be sociable and talk to people and let them know that there's a really cool study going on, a research project, and talk in words that they can understand and they won't scare them off. Like some people get really scared when you say research or study, and so you can say, I have a lot of questions that I want to find out answers about, and kind of understand what are the nuances that are going to make a big difference for you to actually get your foot in the door and then to stay there,
Yeah, and I think the comments in the Etherpad are speaking to a lot of this stuff too. I think one of the things that struck me when I went into research is that I thought maybe I could be a socially inept person and actually do really well in the research world. And I think that does work sometimes, but especially if you're trying to get into fieldwork, you need social skills, which stinks. but we're talking about schools a lot, but getting in is definitely an issue for people studying all sorts of stuff. And we've had some people mention movements. Amanda and I were kind of going back and forth about doing research in online communities. A lot of people that don't study online stuff or participate online sometimes think that it's this flat hierarchy-less kind of environment. But actually, if you hang out on LiveJournal or any of these other probably more hip communities, there's definitely a barking order in some of those communities. So Amanda and I kind of resonated in the Etherpad that going to the leaders of those communities can be really good, because they will sometimes help you recruit participants, which can be really helpful. Yeah, but if at any point anybody else has other examples of non-school stuff, ways that they were able to get in, I think it would be really helpful to those of us that are also thinking about projects in different areas. So our time is up, moving very quickly. Maybe we could move on to a new question, to the third one.
Yeah, so if you all scroll down a little bit to the academic career path question, number 3, my PhD advisor doesn't seem to be interested in my research ideas anymore. I've been working with her for some time, mostly on her projects, but I'm thinking about my dissertation very seriously now, and I don't really feel the support quite yet. Any suggestions for how I can move forward? So my first thing is that yeah, you're working with an advisor, and a lot of times the advisor wants to go in one direction and you're really interested in another direction, and that's fine. That's a natural, I think, process of doing research together and collaborating. But at the same time, you also have to realize that your dissertation is one project that has to begin and it has to end, and it actually has to be done in a fairly short amount of time, right? Like if you think about your advisor, they have a lot of different projects going on and they're going to continue once you leave, whereas your project is like a little drop in the water, and it's an important drop, right? It has quite a big ripple effect, especially for your career, but it's not your whole life project. It's a project that has to start and end, and you have to, you know, keep the momentum going for yourself to finish it, because the worst thing that could happen is if you start a project and you don't get it done, and then you don't have your PhD. And so let's see, we have someone here with a comment. Other committee members can provide different pieces of your support puzzle. I'm sorry, it's just an interesting thing. I did not have a mentor who was 100% invested in my dissertation project. We'll probably have a continuation of that from Anna. And I agree that you have to also be realistic on the support that you're looking for. There's emotional support, there's editorial support, there's funding support, there's model support. I went through the different models. I probably went through 10 different models before I got my dissertation model. You know, like we both agreed on it, and that was fine. That's part of the process. You have to be willing to scratch ideas and throw them out or put them on hold for when you're done, and go talk to some other people to get the insight and the inspiration. And just remember, it has to be, you know, it has to be a project that begins and ends. And so, it doesn't have to be your favorite project, but it has to be something that you like enough to know that you're going to be able to persist and get it done. And I agree that the co-advising situation might be a good way to go around about it, but you also don't want to upset your PhD advisor, right? You want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that feels collaborative. And sometimes PhD advisors, they have an idea of what they want you to do, and you have to be respectful of that. I actually wrote 2 different theoretical background papers. The first one became monstrous, and my advisor had a really hard time telling me that maybe we should let it go. And when she said that, I was like, okay, no problem. Let's start another one. So I have 2 different papers that I started, and it was a good idea because the second one actually was easier to start and end as a project.
Yeah, that's it's so interesting because like I forget that faculty are human beings, and a lot of us, you know, especially academics, very driven people, you know, just because we're really good at research doesn't mean we're really good at these personal skills, you know, that are involved with having a committee, figuring out who to go to for what. And one of the strategies that I use, which I think we're getting a lot of similar kind of comments in the Etherpad, is I don't think advisors can do 100% of everything that you need. And I don't think that they would want to be responsible for 100% of everything that you need. And so when I meet faculty, I think about what parts of my dissertation that they actually find most interesting, and then loop them in when I have questions about that. And I think Melissa and Amber kind of thumbs up to that as one strategy. But these are things that, you know, pro-seminar, like faculty aren't telling you how to juggle all these different things typically in your graduate program. And so distributing your work across faculty is one way to address the challenge of a faculty member, you know, not being 100% about all of your work all the time.
And frankly, when you're out on the job market and you're done with your dissertation, you want to be able to take ownership of your work. And so I tell students or people that are looking for a graduate student advisor, I say if there's a smidgen of overlap between what you want to do and what the advisor is doing, do it, you know, and work on that smidgen, get a good project done, and then you have a whole program of research to do all this really other interesting stuff. And remember, when you're on the job market, you need that. And not only that, even when you're writing grants as a senior person, a faculty member, you're going to need to have a program of research. And so if you can create a program of research that has all these little pieces in it, then your dissertation is just a tiny piece of that program of research, then that's what you should be doing. And so if you can find the overlap with your advisor and also be realistic about the support. Support isn't just about attention. Support is about helping you structure your time and your deadlines and, you know, when is the dissertation due. Sometimes the graduate school has deadlines that are before or after the program, and I found out that I had like a month left when I thought I had 2.5, because we found out, you know, and so the support came in the way that she was like, okay, we'll do this, you know, and she edited it and she helped me, like, you know, with all the comments and everything, and we got it done on time. And another important thing is that your advisor, you know, they're going to help you with all the bureaucracy, and, you know, they're going to make sure that you're going to pass. So sometimes part of it is just kind of saying, you know, I'm going to take this little piece of the puzzle that is part of my bigger program of research, and my support is going to come in the way of me starting and ending the dissertation, doing it well, and having a good committee that's going to approve it at the end, even if I might not have everything done and all the loose ends, because there's a little bit of a leeway where they can say, you know, we approve the dissertation, so formally you're done, but you still have to make some, you know, different changes and adjustments. So that's a very important support. That's a really important part of support that we don't even think about it as, you know, when we're in the dissertation and in the process of thinking about what is the actual, you know, study that we're going to do.
And also, I would say, think about the nature of what you want out of that relationship. And like Adar said, getting potentially other things from other places, because you will have a committee. You will have multiple people that will be able to offer different things. From my perspective, I worked with someone whose research wasn't anywhere close to what I've been studying, and yet he's been the best advisor. My advisor is Jeremy Fries. He does mostly work on genetics, you know, bio-soc kinds of things, and nothing to do with technology, really. He's got a couple of like minor things about technology. He thought that his research would be going in that direction. It did not end up going in that direction, but he's the world's fastest, best editor. He's been super supportive on the job market. He has a very creative mind, and helps me to prioritize work, and is really supportive when I have a vision and I'm like, I want to go this way, and he'll provide me feedback. But whatever my choice is, if I say I'm going to get into 30 schools, he says, I wonder if you can get into 30 schools. But then he lets me run with it. You know, I think that you know, if you're not getting, like, sometimes people, if they're studying something very specific and they want, like, I'm studying how adolescents approach learning new technologies, my advisor does not do research on that. So if I want an in-depth conversation about learning theory and about you know, about what, you know, the nature of what I'm studying, I'm not going to get the sort of like content-specific depth from him, but I'm getting it from other members of my committee and other people that I talk to who read my work. I will get other stuff from him, especially around methods. So just think about that person as not being, like Adar said, like everything, and that you're going to have a relationship with them, even beyond the dissertation. So, yeah.
Right, you're going to need letters of reference from your advisor forever, probably, like, you know, and so you want someone who can be logical, and I think that, Cassidy, your example is great of someone that, even if they're not, you know, in terms of the topic and the themes, and very involved in the research, then they can still be good advisors. And so it's a matter of how you take it and what your expectations are from the relationship. You know, you need to be realistic, so.
Yeah, and I just think, you know, a lot of graduate school, especially in your first couple years, you know, like schools that we talked about before, they're a little hierarchical. So you do have to kind of learn the ropes and prove that you're totally stoked and willing to do the work. And if you do that work, I mean, I had the same experience, Cassidy. In my department, nobody studies technology, really. But as you build those relationships, sometimes the people that you least expect can actually be really terrific mentors on the topic that's new and not even part of their trajectory. But we've hit our 10-minute mark for this group. We went a little over. Should we switch to the next one?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that
Number 4
is number 4, which I believe is scrolling back up to line. Sorry, guys, we're going to have to take you on. Oh, is it down?
To funding.
Yes, funding. So this conversation that we've been having about, okay, so we're on line 122. Question number 4, what are your go-to places when looking for grants and mentorship when considering projects dealing with new media? And then there was a second person who had a similar question about where do you go to aggregate scholarships. So this is kind of like where do you go to look for funding? And this is very much related to and I guess the short answer is there is no one place, because there is no one you, meaning that your work can be funded in many ways, and you have to really think creatively about how you might package it for different audiences, where you might get different funding. In our last week, we talked about having boilerplate information at the ready, just in case through networks there might be someone with a grant who would be willing to, loop you into that grant. That's one possibility that actually happened with my research. What I did was I took my dissertation proposal and I made like a 1 or 2 pager out of that, maybe 5 pager depending on how much information people wanted. I applied for places like NSF, to Ford, and I also applied for internal things. So one of the best places to go, of course, is your local fellowship office. I think that's kind of more of an obvious choice. One of the things that I didn't realize was that there are people at the fellowship office who will help you write these grants. At least in the case of Northwestern, I imagine that it's true in other universities. So this year I'm on fellowship through the American Council of Learned Societies slash Mellon. Like, we're forgetting what my funding is. And that is traditionally a humanities grant. I'm in sociology. I don't know if they have field-specific priorities, but they really like work that is qualitative in nature, although I have mixed methods. And so together with the person at the fellowship office, what we did was they have a stack of copies of successful fellowships that were written for ACLS Mellon, and we sat down together and we read those, and then we looked at what I had as far as the proposal, and we had a conversation, and then we went back and forth in editing. And so definitely a go-to place is the fellowship office, because they will have information and even examples, and that's the best thing that you can get is an example of a successful grant proposal. If you can look at that and model yours after the ways that they have been, and you'd be surprised. NSF posts some of those on their website because they actually really want to help you to get these grants. It's in their best interest to get the best research funded through them, because then they get notoriety. They really want to help you get this money. So NSF is one of them. To know where to go, there are academic wikis with dissertation fellowships, for example. Also, one good way is to just look at the CVs of people in your department or people whose research you think is very similar to yours, and see what they got, and then go to those places. So what I'm saying is that there are not there's UCLA grapes I forget what GRAPES stands for. GRAPES, like literally grapes. So that's one of the there are these big databases. I also know that Harvard has some databases for things like so it's pre-doctoral fellowships, dissertation fellowships, and then once you get towards the job market, postdoctoral fellowships and jobs. And you can do searches for all of those things through Harvard's website. I think if you just Google, I can also look up those links in just a second and start adding them into the wiki. My recommendation is have folders on your computer with your boilerplate, the different folders for the specific funding lines that you're going towards, and a spreadsheet with the sources and when they're due, what's required, because you may be needing letters from faculty, so you got to really think ahead for these funding sources when you're applying. Sometimes, in the case of NSF, those actually, so for me, that was a dissertation improvement fellowship, and that actually goes through my university. So there are some fellowships that first go through the university, so you actually have to have them done maybe even a month before the actual deadline. And sometimes there are these national competitions that first go through your university, so the university will have a deadline, and they don't always specify that. So you have to, sort of be on top of that through your fellowship office, and again, just contact people who have won these things. I mean, I had people emailing me about the ACLS Mellon, people who I did not know, asking if I would send them my proposal, or just, would you give me some information about it? And I was like, sure, here you go. Here's I mean, people don't care. They will send you whatever they want to send you. They'll take out things if they think that they're too much to share. But most of the time, people who have gotten these fellowships are very helpful in helping others get the same fellowships, because you're not in competition. They already got it.
Right.
So
that's a great point.
Right. So
yeah.
And people are used to sharing. People are used to sharing their grant applications. That it goes under a review process, and by then, and especially if you don't have like the exact same idea, then they don't care a lot of the times. And also, you have like this core of what your program of research is, and usually then each research study will kind of chip away at a different part of that, and so that's an important piece to have.
We're getting a lot of really good ideas in the Etherpad as well. I think people are agreeing with a lot of the stuff Cassidy was saying about kind of looking up your advisors or faculty's CV to see the kinds of stuff that they've gotten. And a lot of other really good ideas here. One of the things that occurred to me is I joked last week that I am not particularly successful yet in my career in securing some of these awesome fellowships. But for me, what has worked as a graduate student, and this ties in with the question about finding not only grants but mentorship, is that a lot of times faculty that get grants need help. Like, they can't do an entire research project by themselves, and in fact they applied for these grants so that they could get help. I think we have another question in some other part about networking, but it helps, especially early on in your graduate program, just to introduce yourself to everyone in your nearby vicinity that studies a similar topic of interest. Because you can get grants and these really key, prestigious kind of NSF Ford type things, which can be tough for a lot of people. But you can also tag along on the coattails of others' success by getting to know faculty that are doing research and giving them a reason to think that there's a way that you could chip in and make a difference and build on their work too. Yeah. So we could move on to another question if you guys want to. Did you guys have other stuff you wanted to weigh in on funding? We're good?
Yeah.
Cassidy's adding in the link she talked about. So maybe then we will move on to question number 5. I guess that's my question, or the one that I'll be taking a lead on. So where is question number 5? Okay, question number 5 is on line 77. I'm going to put it in the text there. We are on. So question number 5 goes as follows. I am new to graduate school, and I know connecting with faculty is important. This is exactly what I was just talking about, both in my department and at conferences. But I am horrible at networking, and it feels so awkward to just approach someone and beg them to get to know me. Do you have any suggestions for how to do this with some dignity? I think this is a great question because not only, do researchers have varying levels of social skills, but if you're new to graduate school and to meeting faculty, they have their own rules and etiquette for kind of how to approach one another. And I've heard more than a few established faculty members say that, for example, that the worst time to try to get to know them is immediately after they've given a talk at a conference during Q&A. Their mind is already swimming in what they just talked about. They can barely handle answering any more questions. And so it's just tough to try to really intimately get to know someone at a conference like that. So one tip that I've done, this is just one idea for how to get to know people, especially people that aren't in your department, maybe at a conference, is you can go up after someone gives a speech at a conference and ask them a quick question. And that way you put a name to a face. And then afterwards, maybe a few days after the conference, you send them a follow-up email. And you say, I really loved your talk, kind of continue the conversation electronically. And just by doing that very simple thing, not hogging all of their time immediately after they gave a talk and just following up afterwards, I've had very, established faculty offer even to read papers of mine at a certain point, which is a really great way to connect with other faculty members. So that was one tip that I have. Some other people are adding some really good stuff too. There are a lot of events at conferences can be so awkward, and I hear a lot of graduate students say that I am not a networker, that it's like above them or just too nerve-wracking. But there are ways to do it that minimize the kind of extent to which you really have to embed yourself and put yourself out there. And there are a lot of graduate student events, like faculty member lunches, one person was saying. Is that you, Adar?
Yeah, I used to go to those a lot. Like I went at every conference, whenever there was a free lunch with faculty members or a free breakfast or whatever, I would go. I'd be at that table. I would smile. I'd introduce myself just like everyone else. And I think of one question that I actually really want to ask them. I never bombard people with questions. I think and I'm trying to remember, the last year that I was a graduate student, I got to sit with Andy Elliott, who's like a huge person in my field, and it was like, oh my God, I'm sitting in the table with Andy Elliott, and I don't remember what the question was, but I remember that I asked him a question, and afterwards I said, you'll never forget me after this question. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't like something totally embarrassing, but it was like, but it was something that was kind of like, and then I laughed it off, and he never forgot me, and then the following year at ARA, I emailed him and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, or I didn't say hi. I said, dear Professor Elliott, right? Like there's a certain etiquette you want to keep to when you're writing emails to faculty and stuff. I said, I don't know, perhaps you remember me from the graduate student lunch. I asked you that question, and do you have 15 minutes just sit and chat a little bit about research? And you know what? He did, and he remembered me. And then by then I had known another person, and they remember you by who your advisor is. So they might not remember your name, they might not remember your face, but they will remember your advisor if they know them. So, you know, coupled with the fact that he knows my advisor and he knows someone else that I worked with, and then that I asked him that, I don't even remember what the question was, but I remember that we laughed a little bit then. I think it might have been something about the dessert or something. You know, it was not even like, and then you know, and then you have like that one question. You know, if you're going to sit down with someone for 10 minutes, you want to pick their, if it's a one-on-one, you want to pick their brain. You want to be really focused. Don't talk about, you know, the weather, you know, if you're having that conversation. On the other hand, if you're at the cocktail party and you're at the networking event, don't bombard them with crazy questions. They're there to have a glass of wine as well. So then you do want to talk about the weather. So think about, you know, like, and then you can say, hey, you know, I have a really, you know, I really like this and this thing that you're doing, and I have a question. Can we meet to ask you? And then they will tell you, no, you can ask it now. You know, maybe they're in the mood for a really intense conversation. So, you know, it's just kind of like what Matt was saying with another thing that we talked about, is that these people are people and they have moods and, you know, desires, and sometimes they're not in a mood for a conversation at a cocktail, you know, in a networking event, and they're going there because they kind of have to, and they have to network themselves, you know, with other faculty members. So you want to just kind of be gentle with bombarding people with questions, but at the same time, you want to try to be a little bit memorable with something like, I don't know, think about, you know, especially for people that you want to have a, you know, a continued conversation with. And I like the idea of writing them then like an email, a follow-up email, a few days later or even a week later, you know, not right away, because you do want to have, you want to give them time to have to retrieve from their memory traces, who was that person that I spoke with, and remember you.
Yeah, and I think the other, I see grad students do this all the time, and I think those of us who do interviewing maybe have a tiny bit of an edge up in this realm. But don't lead in with your work, and especially don't lead in by talking about your work for like 10 minutes. I've seen other people do this, and it's just like, make it about them. I think that generally speaking, people like it when you ask them about what they're doing or who they are or how they came to this really cool idea. And I've found that when you make that your strategy for reaching out to people, even if they do ask you what your work is, you know, 1 minute tops, elevator speech, as they say. If they want to talk about it more, you can. That can evolve over time. But if you're making the initiative to try to connect with faculty, make it about them. Ask them what they're working on. Cassidy left a really smart strategy there. Relatedly, I was also told whenever you meet someone, you say, it's nice to see you. You don't say, what's your name? Because if you say it's nice to see you, the implication is that you may have seen each other before already, and you don't have to trip over yourself and think that you have met them. But to that effect, Cassidy's point, where you could just say, so what are you working on now? It does something, and maybe if you want to talk about this, Cassidy, I think it's a really clever move. Actually.
Well, so this was a job market thing. So I was just on the job market this fall, and I will be faculty at Emory in sociology in fall of 2016. I'm a postdoc at Tufts next year. And I was told when I was going on the job market, especially, you know, for those campus interviews where you're just, you know, going crazy, but this works at conferences at any time when you're less crazy. That you ask people this question of what are you working on now, because it suggests that you've already read their stuff, even if you haven't, or even if you just know, you know, their name or, you know, the general area that they where they do their work, and then you know, everyone always has something that isn't out yet, that they're currently working on, and it just starts off that conversation. So especially when you are, if you do go into academia and you do get a campus visit, you're meeting a ton of people, and it's impossible to read everyone's stuff, and you're having these meetings with a lot of people you probably won't know who's on the hiring committee. You have to sit down with them and show that you're a good colleague. That's what people want to see. And so you sit down and you say, so what are you working on now? And it gets you great information. It really like opens up how people are thinking about their work, the deep questions that really inspire them. It's a good question.
So, wow, I can't believe it. We're 5 minutes to the hour, and I guess we should wrap up. We barely even got through five of all of these really awesome questions. I am so excited and happy that everybody participated, and we came up with so many really good solutions to things. So I first just want to thank everybody, my co-facilitators here, as well as Anna and the other folks within the Etherpad who are tweeting out questions, and all of you for answering stuff. I really think that this help and feedback spirit is at the heart of a really good learning experience, and it would be awesome if we could keep this going through the DMLCommons forums. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the questions that are unanswered and move them into the forums in the next day or so. And it would be awesome if we could keep this going, maybe throwing out ideas of other ways to maybe share proposals, share templates for how to apply for certain grants, come up with questions about networking and how to kind of crowdsource stuff like that. It would be really cool to keep the momentum going. So next week is our second unit of the Professional Pathways track, and the topic is community and participatory-based research. So be sure to check back on Tuesday, April 21st at 10 a.m., or just follow the DMLCommons hashtag on Twitter, and you'll be sure to keep on top of the latest. So thanks, everybody. This was really fun, and I hope to see you in the forums. See you guys.